I need to get a hard hat. I don't have a hard hat. There's construction at the White House, so I should. And it's my own fault. I probably should have known when we hired a builder to be the president of the United States. A hard hat would have been a prop or a costume item that would have come in handy. I got a sombrero, but I had a little time to procure that. Anyway, maybe I do have a hard hat. You know what I do have? I have a welding mask. I have a really cool welding mask that I've had for a while, and I have also one of those things that like historians or people, it looks like a mask, but it's really just a magnifying glass. The kind of thing that archivists would use. I have a lot of props, but I do not have a hard hat, and that's something with President Donald Trump tearing apart the White House. I really figured I wanted to wear a hard hat in the thumbnail today, but like I said, I didn't have one, so I had to just wear. My head's pretty hard as it is, so I'll just wear my Mark K for Congress hat, and we'll just call it like it is. By the way, you can see the sombrero. I hung it on the wall for a little while until the government shutdown's over. You'll know the government shutdown is over when the sombrero comes off the wall. Until then, the sombrero stays up there because Hakeem, the Dream Jeffries, still is, just wandering around doing absolutely. He's getting angrier by the day. I think all the Democrats are getting angrier by the day because what's happening is they're getting blamed for this shutdown. They're getting blamed for the shutdown. Their constituents are blaming them for the shutdown. The Schumer shutdown is, it's been well documented. And while the congressional and the Senate Democrats, and you have to think about this, while the congressional and the Senate Democrats really have they have nothing to lose. They're already not in power. They have no power in the House. They have no power in the Senate. They have no power in the White House. They have no power in the Supreme Court. So there's nothing for them to lose at all, which means they're going to dig in. They don't care what's going on at home. They don't care what's going on with their constituents. They don't care, especially the ones that are in deep blue districts. And that's how these things are handled. When you look at New York and California and Chicago, the reason they're so powerful is because they're deep blue centers of political control. So AOC is going to be the strongest voice for the Democrats because she's from New York. She's from the Bronx, and there's no Republican. They're like one Republican in the Bronx, and they're not going to. She's never going to lose power, so she can be as vocal and as obnoxious and as damaging to the United States of America as possible. Same with Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff. These are people, and you think to yourself, God, how is it that these people keep getting elected? Well, I'll tell you, Nancy Pelosi, she got elected by like 150,000 people. And in San Francisco, in her district, that's all it takes is 150,000 totally demented people who are on the take, who believe that Nancy Pelosi is the best choice to represent them. Same with where's Adam Schiff's from, like Burbank or someplace like that. I mean, everybody in Burbank thinks Adam Schiff is a hero instead of the zero that he is. But that's how these things roll on. So the government shutdown continues, even though it seems like there may be some blame now being handed to the Democrats. And I think that the longer the Democrats hold out, I think the worse off it is for them. Because think about it this way. The Republicans have a really good argument here. Okay. And the Democrats have a horrible argument. The Republican argument is that well, you know what? In fact, I'm just going to let Mike Johnson tell you about it because Mike Johnson, again, whom I like a little tiny bit more every single day, had a pretty good description of how historic this shutdown is, especially when you look at why the Democrats are complaining about it.
And it's also important for us to note this is the first time in history that any party has had the audacity to shut down the government over a totally clean, nonpartisan continuing resolution. This is a political stunt, and it's the first time it's been done, and it is the most costly, most selfish, most dangerous political stunt in the history of the United States Congress, because as we have stood here day after day after day explaining all the Americans who are being harmed by this nonsense. And the Senate Democrats have zero shame about this. They don't have any shame at all about the pain that they're inflicting upon hardworking families, upon soldiers and law enforcement officers and veterans and the elderly and the disabled and women, infants, and children. Services to all those categories and paychecks to those folks are being stalled because Democrats are playing games.
Yeah, so the Democrats are playing games. They're trying to get illegal aliens all this money for health care. And in the meantime, Americans aren't getting their paychecks. Americans aren't getting their payments. Americans aren't getting their health care. Americans' lives are stymied and stalled and nothing's moving forward. And the Democrats are to blame. And Mike Johnson, he says it really well. He says, look, this is a clean CR. The Republicans asked for nothing but more time. And that's a whole other argument. Like, I could do an hour on why we needed more time. I could do an hour on, we probably should have just appropriated the money in the time frame we had. That's not what this is. What Mike Johnson is saying is, Mike Johnson says Republicans came to the table asking for nothing but an extension. So there's nothing for the Republicans to negotiate with. The Democrats, instead of saying, okay, let's take more time to figure this out, say, no, we're going to shut down the government unless you give us $1.5 trillion to give to illegal aliens so they can have health care. And the Republicans say, wait a minute, we're not asking you for anything. And you come to the table with $1.5 trillion? Again, I've said in the past, maybe the Republicans should have come to the table with some ask items that they could then, like if the Republicans had come and said, we want $1.5 trillion to give to Elon Musk to build a space force on Mars, then when the Democrats came and said, well, we want $1.5 trillion to give to illegal aliens for healthcare, then you have some negotiating room. And the Republicans could have said, all right, why don't we do it this way? You guys cut your $1.5 million for illegals. We'll cut our $1.5 million for Elon's rockets to Mars, and we'll just get an extension going. They didn't do that. They thought incorrectly that the Democrats would be sensible and would just agree to a clean CR, but that's not happening. In fact, Bernie Sanders from Vermont, Bernie Sanders is the dumbest communist I've ever seen in my entire life. Listen to what he told The View's Sarah Haynes when she talked about average Americans not getting their paychecks.
It's easier for the politicians in D.C. to go away from each other and say, we will win this way, while people are losing their paychecks. If Congress just said, we're not going to take our paychecks till we figure this out, that would be a noble step in the right direction, I would say.
That's not everybody can afford to do. You got some young people there with kids there.
Either can the people that aren't getting paid, though.
I mean, this is his argument. Sarah Haynes says, and this is an argument that I think any American would agree to. Sarah Haynes says, while government is shut down, what we should do is while government is shut down, what we should do is we should basically say, hey, you know what? We are not going to take a paycheck. While government is shut down, we should say, we are not taking any paychecks. We're not taking anything whatsoever. We're just going to work and we're going to do our own thing and yada, yada, yada. And when the government opens back up, we'll start getting paid again. That's the easiest thing to do. Bernie Sanders has the audacity to say to her, well, some people can't afford that. They got young kids. Some of these representatives, they got young kids. They gotta take care of their kids. And Sarah Haynes is like, yes, so do Americans. In fact, Americans that are suffering, I can't believe this is his answer to this. This is the dumbest communist ever. As a communist, Bernie Sanders, you'd think, would want everybody to be equal. But he's like, no. Listen, I get that military men and women who put their lives on the line aren't getting paid. They're not getting the paychecks. I get it. But you cannot take the paychecks away from the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate, because they're not all rich like me. Some of them are poor. Some of them, they got little kids. They can afford. I don't have little kids. I got 3 houses. I'm rich. I can afford it, but I'm still taking my paycheck because, I'm in solidarity with the poor one. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. Bernie Sanders is trying to argue that the Senate can't give up their salaries because they can't afford it, while maintaining his no vote to keep average Americans from getting their salaries. This whole thing is, I'm going to be honest with you, it's just ridiculous. And I just can't believe it. Anyway, listen, there's a new thing for the Democrats to be angry about, and that is the renovations at the White House. President Donald Trump is renovating the White House, and man, it's a new meltdown. It's a new day. It's a new meltdown for the Democrats in office in the United States of America. If you missed it this morning on the 47 Daily, we did a little deep dive into what's going on with the renovations, but this story has just continued to grow. So I want to share with you the latest. President Donald Trump, let's go back a bit. Donald Trump months ago announced that he was building a ballroom at the White House, a big, beautiful ballroom at the White House. It was going to be adjacent to the East Wing. It wasn't going to interfere with any of the White House. It was going to be separate from the existing structure. He was going to build it out, and he said this was going to be one of the most amazing structures ever. This was going to be one of the most beautiful ballrooms ever. No comparison, not even at Mar-a-Lago. And in fact, I think I have, let me see if I have photos of it somewhere. I do. I have photos. Let me see if I can pull up these photos for you here. These are photos. Hang on, let me go over here. These are photos to the world when the world came to the White House. And with President Donald Trump in office, the world comes to the White House quite a bit. And President Donald Trump mentioned yesterday that demolition was beginning, and he was very excited. This would be incredible and something that every American, there we go. These should be excited about, because this is what America, opulence and majesty and excellence is all about. It would showcase that to the world when the world came to the White House. And with President Donald Trump in office, the world comes to the White House quite a bit. And President Donald Trump mentioned yesterday that demolition was beginning.
You have a lot of construction going on, which you might hear periodically. But that's a knockout panel, and that goes right into the ballroom, and the ballroom's going to be beautiful. You'll have drinks, cocktails, everything on this floor, and then they'll say, "Welcome to dinner." You walk into the ballroom, Mr. Senators, and you're going to see a ballroom the likes of which I don't think it'll be topped. It'll be the finest. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It just started.
Yeah, and that's something that just started. Well, now President Donald Trump is saying, look, here's the dealio. This ballroom, which I announced months ago, people are starting to complain about it. Now that the ballroom is underway, and I'll show you, and there's photos of the White House being quote unquote demolished. The White House, I guess maybe these Democrats have never actually done any kind of reno, but when you do renovation, there's times that you have to tear out the old or create some kind of accessibility point, something like that. So there's a demolition company, and they came in and they boarded off the White House, and they're clearing away some of the wall. They're knocking down some of the wall so that they can build the ballroom off of this, just as President Donald Trump said. But man, the Democrats going crazy. They're saying Donald Trump is destroying the White House. Donald Trump is demolishing democracy. Gavin Newsom's like, this is the perfect demonstration of what Donald Trump's doing, not just to the country, but to our beautiful White House. And all of it, of course, is false, because when you build, there's tearing down first. When you fix something, if you have a hole in the wall, you have to make the hole bigger so you can put in the drywall. All this kind of stuff that real Americans and DIYers know about. So President Donald Trump, after all the hubbub today, went through kind of the history of the West Wing.
This is, as you see over here, the Presidential Walk of Fame. And we had this long wall with half windows, because that used to be a swimming pool on the other side of the wall. That was the swimming pool where Jackie would say, "I hear women inside." Are women inside? Quite a famous, I'm not saying anything, this was a part of a movie. And the Secret Service said, "No, ma'am, there's no women inside, ma'am. I'm sorry, ma'am, you're going to have to move along. But I hear women inside." "No, ma'am, you'll have to move along, ma'am." So that was the famous swimming pool. Now it's even worse. It's for the media. They covered the pool up. And now it's for the media. And I think we have a small representative group. I don't think they allowed the rest of them. I can't believe it. What happened? They're all on the other side of the wall. Can you believe it?
Yeah, so President Donald Trump saying, look, this is something that's been going on throughout history. In fact, the West Wing didn't exist. The White House itself used to just be that. It was a White House, and it was built in Washington, D.C. And then you may remember it was burned to the ground during the War of 1812 by the British, and Dolly Madison grabbed the painting of George Washington and she ran. That's a very famous story as well. So then what did they do? They rebuilt it. And then along in about 1901, maybe, Theodore Roosevelt decided that we needed a West Wing. So the West Wing, which is now the hub, the center of political activity for the entire world. The West Wing, as we know it, the location of the famed television drama starring Martin Sheen and that other good-looking guy from the St. Elmo's Fire. I forget his name. Rob Lowe. Thank you. Those two. That show is based on a structure that was created by President Theodore Roosevelt. Then you had, throughout history, it was Franklin Roosevelt built in the Oval Office. And then the Oval Office was moved later on to its final destination by somebody else. Truman gutted the entire building. Nixon put in the swimming pool. Nixon put in Nixon covered up the swimming pool, put the press area there. Nixon built a bowling alley because he didn't like to swim, but he liked to, toss his balls down the lane and knock down some pins. And then Barack Obama, famously, when he was in the office, paved over the tennis court and replaced it with a basketball court. He got rid of the tennis court and he replaced it with a full-size regulation basketball court. Well, Donald Trump is saying that's all well and good, but we need a ballroom. Fun fact, as far as I know, Donald Trump is the only person that said, yeah, that's all well and good, but we need a ballroom. And FYI, I'm going to pay for it with my rich friends. I'm going to pay for it without a single dime of taxpayer money. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to get a bunch of donations and the donors are going to put together the money for the ballroom and I'm going to kick in whatever else is left, whatever else is needed. And together we're going to fund this and gift it to the American people. As far as I know, Donald Trump's the only person to privately fund a government addition or an addition to the West Wing or to the White House. And it's not something I think he's going to take with him. But the Democrats, all they see is the construction at the White House. All they see is what's happening now. And they are freaking out and they are blaming Donald Trump. And they are saying Donald Trump is destroying America because he's trying to make America and the White House even better. It's really ridiculous and also totally understandable because that's basically what the Democrats do. Now, I will say this. There's been, of course, a lot of other stuff that Donald Trump's been doing at the White House. There's the 2 flagpoles that you may remember. He put in 1 flagpole in front and 1 flagpole behind. And those are the largest flagpoles, I think, in D.C. They look like, it looks like some kind of truck rest stop with those, how big those flagpoles are. And he paid for those again, out of his own pocket. There are gold renovations and there are gold additions to the Oval Office and to the hallways of the White House. Everything has been upgraded. You can see every time he does a press conference, it's bigger, it's bolder, it's brighter. He brought in new furniture. He brought in the mirror yesterday, the 400-year-old mirror. Look, this is the thing. And this clip we played yesterday, and I'll play it again. Donald Trump is so in tune with history and has such an appreciation for art and antiquity and things that are and luxury. Donald Trump, probably more than any other president before him, truly has an appreciation for interiors and exteriors and making things as beautiful as possible. So you have to believe that if there is restoration or renovation or construction going on to the White House, it's not to destroy anything, tools, it's to make it even bigger and better. And let's not forget, more utilitarian. Think about this. The White House doesn't have a ballroom. So when there's a big event, when there's a state dinner, when there's something that requires a large amount of space for a large number of guests, when there's something like whatever kind of, you name it, whatever kind of celebration you're going to have, Donald Trump and company have to go off site. And if you go off site, you know what's going to happen? If you go off site, you're going to have Secret Service go out and scour the area. And there's going to have to be checks and there's going to have to be the dogs coming in and they're going to have to make sure there's snipers on the roof. And you're going to have to secure a whole new section, a whole new building. That is a massive expense for the taxpayers. You're going to have to transport the president and other dignitaries, and that requires police and Secret Service. And that locks up traffic in downtown DC, and that causes lost revenue. And so by keeping everything at the White House, literally by adding to the White House, you are subtracting the expenses of President Donald Trump going anywhere else. It's something that if the White House is fortified 24/7 and the White House is protected 24/7, wouldn't you want the president to spend as much time as he can there? Because that way you don't have to worry about having to go out and secure other locations. I know I would. Donald Trump would. And it doesn't make any sense that the White House, with the Oval Office and the Situation Room and the residence and the East Wing and everything else, it doesn't make any sense that they don't have a space like this. But President Donald Trump is going to change all of that because he's a builder, not just a builder of coalitions, but a builder of actual buildings. Speaking of coalitions, J.D. Vance is in Israel. J.D. Vance flew to Israel with Steve Witkoff. He took his wife, Usha Vance, and Jared Kushner's there as well. And they're talking about this peace deal. Now, the peace deal in Israel is about a week old. And you may remember that there was immediately when Gaza was handed back over to Hamas and Hamas took control, they acted a fool. They acted up a little bit. They started shooting people in the streets. Not Jewish people. They started shooting other Palestinians. It's really kind of weird. they wanted, they want death to Israel, and they want, death to America. But then as soon as they get their hands back on their own little strip of land, they start shooting each other. But that's, I can't explain the mentality of Hamas because, I have common sense. But anyway, so JD Vance is in Israel because Donald Trump says, look, there's a lot of work left to do. And while 59 countries agreed to this deal, Hamas also agreed to the deal. And if they don't hold up the end of the bargain, we're going to end them.
We have 59 countries that agreed to the deal. We have a peace in the Middle East for the first time ever. We made a deal with Hamas that, they're going to be very good. They're going to behave. They're going to be nice. And if they're not, we're going to go and we're going to eradicate them if we have to. They'll be eradicated, and they know that. So they went in, and I don't believe it was the leadership. They had some rebellion in there among themselves, and they killed some people, a lot of people. But this is a violent group. You probably noticed over the last 100 years, this is a very violent group of people. And they got very rambunctious, and they did things that they shouldn't be doing. And if they keep doing it, then we're going to go in and straighten it out, and it'll happen very quickly and pretty violently, unfortunately.
Yeah, pretty violently, unfortunately, is what Donald Trump is saying. If they act up, if they do this, if they make a mockery of all this, and if they continue with these hostile acts, whether it's the leadership or whether it's their underlings or whomever it is, if that happens, then basically what Donald Trump is saying is, look, we are going to go in and we're going to take care of business. And he sent JD Vance there to make sure that everybody knows that. Look, JD Vance is on site, and he's there to keep the peace. JD Vance, the future president of the United States, most likely, is there in Israel, and he is going to do everything that he needs to do to make sure that this peace deal continues, and that nothing, not Hamas, not the gang violence, not the rivalries on the streets, not the murders, nothing is going to stymie this or stop it from moving forward the way President Donald Trump has imagined, along with the other 59 countries.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to have you. Look, I think that we are 1 week into President Trump's historic peace plan in the Middle East, and things are going, frankly, better than I expected that they were. This is a very, very tough situation. You have two peoples, two enemies who have fought a very tough conflict against each other. You have a terrorist organization on one hand that murdered a lot of innocent people. You've got an Israeli army that was defending itself on the other, that has learned a lot over the past couple of years. And then, of course, you have an innocent civilian population in Gaza that's caught in the middle. But we're here at the Civilian Military Cooperation Center, which we are announcing the opening of. You have Israelis and Americans working hand in hand to try to begin the plan to rebuild Gaza, to implement a long-term peace, and to actually ensure that you have security forces on the ground in Gaza, not composed of Americans, who can keep the peace over the long term. So we've got a lot of work left to do. This is going to take a very, very long time, but I think Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Admiral Cooper behind me have done an incredible job. I want to say just a couple of quick things, and then I want to turn it over to Steve Witkoff. Number one, the Israeli government has been remarkably helpful in this. I want to thank them, thank our Israeli partners, and all the folks particularly who are working hand in hand with their American friends here at the CMCC. And number two, I want to say that there is this weird attitude I've sensed in the American media and the Western media where there's almost this desire to root for failure, that every time something bad happens, that every time that there's an act of violence, there's this inclination to say, oh, this is the end of the ceasefire, this is the end of the peace plan. It's not the end. It is, in fact, exactly how this is going to have to happen when you have people who hate each other, who have been fighting against each other for a very long time. We are doing very well. We are in a very good place. We're going to have to keep working on it, but I think we have the team to do exactly that. So with all thanks to our partners, both in Israel, but all across the Gulf Arab states, Indonesia, the Turks, we are doing an amazing thing here, and I'm particularly proud of the American troops working at the command center who are coordinating this effort and making it possible.
All right, perfect. There you go. And he's saying, look, we've got all these people, we've got all these great folks that are a coalition, we've got all these great things that are happening, but Hamas needs to know that this is serious, and they're not, we're not going to put up with it.
The president actually put out a truth this morning that I thought was very volunteers who want to participate in that international security force. So my point is, I don't think it's actually advisable for us to say this has to be done in a week, because a lot of this work is very hard. It's never been done before, and in order for us to give it a chance to succeed, we've got to be a little bit flexible. I think what you're seeing from our Gulf Arab friends, certainly from our Israeli friends, is a certain amount of impatience with Hamas, but we're going to keep on working at this process, and we're going to keep on trying to bring the deceased hostages home, but also make sure that all Gazans are able to live in a prosperous and safe place.
Yeah, which brings up the question, and again, it's so interesting because every time something good happens in the White House, every time something good happens in the administration, Donald Trump gets met with negative spin from the media, negative spin from the press. And even something as amazing as this starts getting spun the wrong way. And even when Donald Trump says, look, we're going to make sure that this happens. We're going to make sure that this happens. We're going to make sure that Hamas doesn't act up. We're going to make sure that peace continues. We're going to make sure that the ceasefire is maintained, yada, yada, yada. The press automatically goes, well, does that mean you're sending troops in? And Donald Trump says, no, I've told you a bajillion times, there will be no boots on the ground in Gaza. We're not sending the American military to Gaza. That's not going to happen. But every time he mentions it, the Truth Social post where he goes, we will have to kill Hamas if they keep killing people, then all of a sudden the media acts up and goes, wait a minute, that means you're sending in troops. And Donald Trump goes, no. And J.D. Vance said, no, for the love of God, we're not.
I think it's important for Americans to know a couple of things. Number one, there are not going to be American boots on the ground in Gaza. The President of the United States has made that very clear. All of our military leadership has made that very clear. What we can do is provide some useful coordination. How do you take, the Gulf Arab states, plus Israel, plus the Turks, plus the Indonesians? How do you actually get those folks to work together in a way that actually produces long-term peace? The only real mediators are the United States of America. And so that's the role that we're going to play. I think the American people should be proud of it, but they should know that there are going to be no American boots on the ground in Gaza.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know that we need American boots on the ground anywhere else. I saw what happened in Iran. In Iran, the entire nuclear proliferation program that Iran has been building for decades was demolished in about 20 minutes. Operation Midnight Hammer, President Donald Trump and Raisin Cain and Second War Hegseth, they all came up with this brilliant plan of misdirection and deterrence, and they flew these planes across the ocean and they refueled them in the sky, and they were totally undetected, and the planes flew in and they dropped 6 or 7 bunker buster bombs, enough to destroy pretty much almost anything. They dropped these bombs over and over again on these military facilities, direct hits, destroyed them all, then flew home. Meanwhile, you had warships on with the Tomahawk missiles, and they were shooting those just to be sure. Donald Trump, just to be certain, we then fired a bunch of Tomahawk. After we dropped the bunker buster bombs, we were like, you know what? We should just to double check, let's fire some Tomahawk missiles at these things too. And he did, and it destroyed Iran, and Iran became no longer a nuclear threat to anybody in the world. No boots on the ground, just a whole bunch of boots in the air. We remember when General Soleimani was killed in Iraq after he landed at the airport. He and his entourage got in their vehicles. They were driving around through the airport. The drone strike came in. Boom. General Soleimani, one of the deadliest terror leaders in the entire world, in the history of the world, killed instantly. No boots on the ground, just a drone in the air. The whole term boots on the ground is going to become less and less of a necessity or of a proper military term as our military technology and our military training and as our expertise continues to grow, because fewer and fewer boots will be needed on the ground the more and more we advance our systems. And that's something Donald Trump knows. And that's something J.D. Vance knows. And that's something the American media knows too. But also there's Israel. And Israel, sure, Donald Trump will give Israel whatever it needs, or sell Israel whatever it needs, because that's what Donald Trump does. Donald Trump's not a giver, he's a seller. Donald Trump sells stuff to NATO so that they can give it to Ukraine. Donald Trump will sell stuff to other people so they can give it here and there. And Donald Trump, I imagine, is more than happy to continue selling stuff to Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli Defense Force so that they can continue to defend themselves and make sure that this peace agreement goes down. There are enough, as Qatar has some American-made jets that they just bought, and wouldn't you know it, we're training their pilots in Idaho. I know a lot of people are upset about that, but at the same time, the reason we do all of this is so that we don't have to have American boots on the ground. And the Democrats, the same people that complain about, actually, that's not true. Democrats love war, But the same people that complain about sending boots on the ground or sending the American military overseas are the same people that complain when we arm other countries or train other countries. And I just don't think you can have it both. You can't say, I don't want the American military being the police force of the world or the watchdog of the world, or why do we keep sending troops over for these conflicts that we have nothing to do with? You can't say that on one day and then the next day say, why are we arming other countries? Why are we selling arms to Israel? Why are we training Qatari pilots? Well, if you don't want us to do it, then someone's got to do it. And we want to make sure that those people have the best weapons, the best equipment, and the best training. And we know that we have the best weapons, the best training, and the best equipment. So it's you got to take it, it's either one or the other. I would much rather we sell stuff to countries and say, good luck. Like, for example, let's say I wanted to buy another gun. I have several. Let's say I want another one. I would go to the gun store and say, here's what I'm looking for. And they would say, here's what I've got. It's this much. Plus we'll sell you some ammo. Plus if you want like a laser sight or a holster, whatever you need, we'll sell it to you. But then it's your job to go home and shoot intruders or practice with it and all that kind of stuff. If that's basically the same premise here. What most people think is, if I wanted home protection, I would call up the gun store and say, send a bunch of dudes here with guns to stand outside my house and shoot intruders. That's what our foreign policy has been for years. Now we're just selling people the guns, teaching them how to use them, and say, good luck. Go shoot those intruders. And that's something that's going to continue. So there will be no boots on the ground. And this is a model. Again, this is something that Donald Trump has put together with his contingent, with all these other countries that J.D. Vance says is going to be a model for good the world over.
This model, I think, could serve for a foundation for normalization, not just in the Middle East, but across the world. Because what we're taking, again, is a long-term, protracted conflict with two enemies who really don't like each other, and we're actually creating a model that can lead towards sustainable peace. Now, we know that a lot of our Gulf Arab friends would like to have normalized relations with Israel. We know that getting this peace on a sustainable pathway is sort of the critical first step of that. But look, I feel very optimistic about where we are. Knock on wood, you never know how this stuff is going to go. But given what I've seen, given the incredible talent and effort that's going in to the reconstruction of Gaza, to the long-term security of the Gazans in that territory, I feel very good about where we are. And again, if we get this right, I really do think it's going to be a domino that leads to a lot of further peace all across the region.
And that is something that everybody is hoping for. That is something that everybody hopes comes to fruition, is a long-term peace agreement in the Middle East, something that has been put together by President Donald Trump and his coalition, and something that probably, hopefully, will win him back will win him the Nobel Peace Prize when it comes down to it. So I was monitoring something here. There's another piece of information that came out today that I wanted to share with you. This is regarding deportation numbers. And I think this is important because, whenever one conflict or whenever there's one, I guess you would say, what do you call it? Like a fake news conspiracy that pops up, you kind of forget that all the other work is going on, which actually isn't bad. And this government shutdown and this, all of this No Kings rally that they were throwing over the weekend and the construction at the White House, it's all kind of interesting because it's kind of taken the eye off the ball, which is the deportations. But Donald Trump is hitting, and Tom Homan and Kristi Noem and Steve Miller, they're all hitting their deportation numbers, but better than anyone ever imagined.
And deportation numbers hitting record highs since President Trump's return to office. His administration booting more than 515,000 illegal migrants so far. 1.6 million illegals have left the country on their own, with immigration agents arresting 485,000. DHS saying that Trump is set to shatter the U.S. deportation record by the end of 2025.
Okay, so he's going to shatter the deportation. He's got over 2.5 million deportations going on, or self-deportations, which is important. The self-deportation there is that's really interesting to me. Because when you look at the self-deportation, you start to see how President Donald Trump, and again, that it all goes back to peace through strength. People are like, why is it that there are so many there's so many people out there who are just doing what President Donald Trump says? Why are so many countries coming to the table? Well, because Donald Trump said, I'm going to levy a tariff on you, and he followed through with that. So now when Donald Trump says, I'm going to levy a tariff on a country, they know that it's true because there's proof. There's proof of concept. When Donald Trump says, I'm going to bomb the snot out of you or kill you, they saw what happened in Iran. They know what happened to General Soleimani, and they know that Donald Trump is currently blowing Venezuelan narco-terrorist boats out of the water and Colombian submarines out of the ocean and not losing any sleep over it because Donald Trump does what he says he's going to do. And so now what we're starting to see is the same thing, it acts exactly the same way. When Donald Trump says, we're going to deport you, we're going to take you back from whence you came. When you see all of these ICE agents all over the country doing exactly what was instructed of them, you see that there is going to be a self-deportation because these people are like, well, I apparently have two choices. Wait for Donald Trump's ICE agents to come, deport me, remove me from the country, and take me back home and mark me in a way where I will never be able to legally return to the United States of America. And they don't want that. So they leave on their own. And then I guess, try to go through the process of then coming back to the United States of America legally. Those are the options, and they know it. And the smart ones are taking it. And that saves America tons of money. It's the same thing with these bombs. It's the same thing. If you bomb the snot out of Iran, like really do a job on Iran, then all of a sudden every other country is going to go, well, I don't want that to be me. And so they come to the table and they negotiate. They come to the table and they start to deal. Donald Trump is the master of keeping his promises. No empty threats. There's no empty threats coming from the White House. Never have been. Donald, whether it's tariffs, whether it's bombing, whether it's deportation, whether it's crime, whatever it happens to be, there's no such thing as an empty threat coming from Donald Trump. He'll follow through on everything he said. And as a result, it saves us so much money because we don't have to go to war with Iran. We've already basically demolished them. And how many other wars have we avoided because of the example that Donald Trump set in Iran? How many ICE agents do we not need to hire? I mean, we've hired a bunch. We probably need more. But how many ICE agents do we need to not hire because of all the self-deportations? That number's huge. It's leading by example, and it's a great way to keep America safe. And also, save us a bunch of money, boost the economy, cut down the debt. It's money we don't have to spend on things we don't want to spend stuff on because we're basically inspiring people not to mess with us. And it's what he said about Maduro in Venezuela the other day at the meeting, which I'm not going to repeat because it's a wordy dirt. But the fact of the matter is, it works in every aspect of government. One other story that we're really covering is this. So this mayor's race in New York City with Zohran Mamdani, who I guess is going to be the mayor. It appears that Zohran Mamdani is going to be the mayor. And at this point now, what people are doing is they're asking for or demanding Curtis Sliwa drop out of the New York City mayoral race. Curtis Sliwa, who's run for mayor several times, founder of the Guardian Angels. People want him out. They want him out. They want him out because they believe that if he leaves the race, he won't draw any Republican votes and the Republicans can vote for Andrew Cuomo. They believe that with Curtis Sliwa in the race, that's going to drag enough votes away from Andrew Cuomo, and they'll be left with Zohran Mamdani, the Muslim fundamentalist, terrorist sympathizer, communist mayor of New York to be. Andrew Cuomo, not a great choice himself, but they believe would be better than Zohran Mamdani. Well, Curtis Sliwa, even though the newspapers, pretty much everybody in New York has been asking this guy to drop out, Curtis Sliwa rejected growing calls for him to end his bid for New York City mayor. Let's be very clear. I am not dropping out under no circumstances, the GOP nominee for mayor said at a press conference Tuesday morning. I've already been offered money to drop out. I said no. The comments come a day after his boss, influential Republican John Catsimatidis, issued a public plea for Sliwa to drop out of the race and unite behind Andrew Cuomo. Republican mayoral candidate Curtis Sliwa announced at a press conference on October 21st, he will not be ending his campaign for mayor. You can see there's a woman there holding the New York Post that says, "Just walk away, beret." It's kind of funny. That's a good, the New York Post is always good for a witty headline, aren't they? Just walk away, beret. Curtis Sliwa, wearing his beret, says, nope, I'm not going anywhere. For months, the crowded field of mayoral hopefuls has been called on to coalesce behind a single candidate in an attempt to prevent proud socialist Zohran Mamdani from winning City Hall. but the urging from Castamadidis moved the pressure campaign to a new level, with the billionaire grocery store owner also bankrolling Sliwa's day job as a shock jock on WABC. So, okay, first of all, Curtis Sliwa is not a shock jock, but yes, he does work for ABC Radio in New York, and that's owned by the Castamadidis family, or I guess, their company. And I mean, I don't think that you can, maybe you can. I guess you can do whatever you want. I don't think that you could fire somebody from their radio job because they refused to drop out of the race. But I mean, I guess it does add a new level of pressure, right? When you have your boss, somebody who pays you and who runs your, radio show and everything else, when you have them saying, look, you gotta drop out of this race or else, I don't want you running this race anymore. I mean, it has to put some pressure on you. I don't know legally or logistically what my boss has never, I don't have a boss now. When I did, they just said, please leave. They never said drop out of the race or else. But it definitely is interesting when you think about that. Sliwa is currently on leave from Catsimatidis' radio station while he campaigns, which I think is, you have to be. I don't think you can be on a federal or I don't think that you can be on a federally regulated airwave, whether it's radio or television, while you're running for office. I know that that's been some issues. I know Bubba the Love Sponge ran for sheriff was it Hillsborough County? Somewhere out there near Tampa, and he had to come off his radio show for a while. Sliwa, though, continues to have the backing of other Republican bigwigs, including Catsimatidis' daughter, Andrea, who chairs the New York GOP committee. Really, really bizarre and interesting political race in New York City. Zoran Mamdani, Andrew Cuomo, one communist, one really bad Democrat, and everybody urging the one Republican left in this race to drop out so that we don't end up with a communist mayor in America's most important city, which seems like right now to be the likely scenario. Republicans across every borough stand united behind Curtis Sliwa for mayor of New York City, said the county chairs in a joint statement. Republican voters are not going to vote for Andrew Cuomo. See, that's the other thing, too. That's the other thing. I don't know that anybody is going to vote for Andrew Cuomo at this point. But surely Republicans, that's a good question. As a voter, because this question comes up, this question comes up all the time when you talk about what I'm doing, for example, which is running in a primary. And when you have a primary, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, you have candidates of the same party. Let's take, for example, Donald Trump's race in 2016. You had 14 Republicans running for president in the primary, and they were all attacking each other, and Donald Trump was attacking them, and they were attacking Donald Trump. And that's when we got all the attacks on Jeb Bush, and we got the little Marco for Marco Rubio and Lion Ted Cruz and all these other things, all these names that Donald Trump was hurling at people. And it worked. He got the nomination, and President Donald Trump became the nominee for the Republican Party. And then what happened was a bunch of the candidates, not all of them, a bunch of the candidates fell in line and said, look, the primary was one thing, but now we need to line up behind the Republican candidate and make sure that the Democrat doesn't win. Now our battle with Donald Trump is over. Now what we need to do is we need to beat Hillary Clinton. And typically what happens is all the Republicans battle each other. Somebody wins. Most of the Republicans come to the table and say, let's get our guy elected, even though I didn't want him to be the guy. But at the end of the day, there's always one or two people who don't want to who just can't put politics aside. They just can't put their other issues aside. But there are people, John Kasich, for example. John Kasich was the governor of Ohio, and he ran against President Donald Trump, and he was the last to drop out, and he never coalesced behind President Donald Trump to beat Hillary Clinton. He just rode that horse for till his dying day. He actually may still be alive now that I think about it. But that's one of the points that we see. But typically you need everybody to come together to beat the Democrat. This is a different scenario because we don't have anybody. We don't have anybody on the Republican side who could win against Zoran Mamdani. So they're trying to coalesce everybody who's not Zoran Mamdani against the communist Muslim candidate. And that's a tough ask, man. That's a difficult thing to do, especially since Republicans would maybe have a sense of, I guess you would say, party loyalty or a sense of determined like a will to do the right thing and to bury the hatchets and to fight for their candidate, no matter who it is, just to keep the Democrat out of office. But I don't think Republicans have that same sense of urgency when it comes to voting for the lesser of two Democrats. And with Andrew Cuomo and with what he did during COVID, I mean, maybe if it was any other Democrat, but Andrew Cuomo's the worst, which brings us back to the whole question of why is it that we can't get good candidates? Why is it we can't get good people to run for these offices? Why is it that we can't get anybody other than Andrew Cuomo, the defeated, attacked, dejected, disgraced governor from COVID, governor's sexual harassment? Why is it that he is the only person capable of running against Zoran Mamdani, who is basically a Muslim fundamentalist communist? Is there no normal person that wants to run New York City? Or is there no normal person or good quality candidate that could run and win in New York City? It's really an odd and bizarre thing, but that's where we are. That's where we find ourselves today, which I guess is, you know what? I guess that's, it seems like it's been a lot longer since 9/11, but it's only been 24 years. And this is where we are today. We're now looking at hiring somebody who is a known communist and terrorist sympathizer to be the mayor of New York City. Really, really weird. I want to check real quick one more time before I wrap up. So Donald Trump held a Rose Garden event earlier this morning. And at the Rose Garden event, he talked about, as we pointed out, the swimming pool construction and some of the other construction projects. But he also mentioned a couple of other things. One of the things is about the shutdown. And this shutdown, again, I have to believe we're now 11 votes in and the Democrats still refuse to reopen the government. Here was President Donald Trump's latest comments on the shutdown as of this morning.
We've already seen the impacts of the dangerous game that they're playing. Democrats are causing delays in our air traffic control system. So important. We wouldn't have had, this Pete Buttigieg, he spent billions of dollars on fixing the air traffic control that use copper wire going into glass wire. Any union electrician here or any non-union electrician would say you can't hook copper into glass. It doesn't work. They spent billions of dollars. They turned on the system and it was stone cold blank. We're getting a brand new system. We have bids out now. We have 3 great companies bidding. And I want one bid. Sean Duffy's doing terrifically. I want one bid. I want just bid. And they're responsible for everything. Not where they had like 1,000 contractors. Every contractor, they were all running around. In the end, if one of them does a bad job, we want to be able to blame somebody, and it's going to be one of the very big companies because there's a lot of interest in it. So the air traffic control system is going to be rebuilt. Over 1 million federal workers right now, as you know, are going unpaid. That's the Democrats' fault. And children, tourists unable to visit the museums in Washington, D.C., that we now have beautiful, safe streets, but we don't have the museums open. We should probably just open them. But we are doing things that nobody's ever done, nobody's ever seen. So all of this and the pain that the Democrats have caused during this reckless and completely unnecessary affair, and you could call it the Schumer shutdown or the Democrat shutdown, you can call it whatever you want, and he
will. And he's right about a lot of things. Donald Trump does something amazing, and this is unlike any shutdown we've ever seen before. And I think the reason it's going so long, and the reason that the Democrats are going to lose in the end, is because they've never experienced this with somebody like President Donald Trump, who says maybe we should just open the museums, maybe we should find the money somewhere else, maybe we should just pay the troops. Maybe we could just use all this tariff revenue, and if we use all this tariff revenue that I've gotten us, maybe we could save WIC. Maybe we could continue to pay for these programs while the Democrats keep us all shut down. Maybe we could do all of those. Nobody ever asked questions before. Every other time there was a government shutdown, somebody would just say, well, we just got to wait. We just got to wait till one side gives in. We just got to wait. But Donald Trump doesn't do that. He doesn't wait. He goes, we're going to continue on. And we've got a beautiful city. We've made it safe again. And now, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make sure that people can come to our museums, even if there's no money. We're going to find the money somewhere. Because there's always going to be money. There's always going to be money somewhere, whether it comes from the federal government or whether it comes from a private entity or whether it comes from somewhere else. There will always be a way for people to pay for something. And if Donald Trump can circumvent the system and make these government shutdowns less, I guess you would say, less of an abuse of power, less of an inconvenience for average Americans, then the Democrats have lost all power, what little they had left. The shutdown's the only thing that they had left to control. And if Donald Trump can start paying for things in different ways, they're not even going to be able to control that. Speaking of control, Donald Trump is a master, not just at politics and political control, but also when it comes to business and real estate and entertainment and raising a family, which is something, you know, when you look at his kids and his grandkids and everything that Donald Trump has created, you can see that the excellence that he administers, not just in construction projects and peace deals, and you know, other things that permeates through to his parenting style. And in my book, Go Trump Yourself, which is available now, by the way, the digital bundle, it's available for instant download. You get the digital ebook and also the audiobook as read by the author. We outline all kinds of great stories of our interactions with President Donald Trump and his family on the campaign trail, things that we learned, life lessons we learned from following President Donald Trump, and how you can emulate them, how you can be like Donald Trump so you can succeed like Donald Trump. Be like Trump and succeed like Trump, and learn how to do both of those things in my book, Go Trump Yourself. Get the digital bundle right now. It's an ebook and it's an audiobook bundled together for your listening and or reading enjoyment. Go to gotrumpyourself.com. Get the book today. Live like Trump tomorrow. Gotrumpyourself.com. We've also put a link in the description of this video, so it's very, very easy for you to find if you're, if you can't spell or something like that. Anyway, in the meantime, thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, subscribe to this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble or Facebook, wherever you happen to be, make sure that you're getting this content all the time. Make sure that you're telling this platform, I want this. Whenever Marquet goes live, whenever he publishes something new, send it directly to me because I don't want to miss it. Because this is the only way I'm able to keep you informed. It's the only way that you're able to stay entertained by the entertaining content we're providing. And it's the best way for Patriots, liberty-loving, freedom-defending Patriots all over the globe to stick together, to stay together, and to fight together so that we can continue to save the Republic. We have an extended after party, by the way, more of Marquet Saves the Republic for our Patriot Club members only. It's only $10 a month, or if you get a year subscription, we'll give you 2 months for free. Go to Patriots.com. We're going to kick off the after party here momentarily. Patriots.com, the after party, an additional amount. If you're like, man, this show was great, but it was short, there's more. It's going to be in the Patriot Club. Go to Patriots.com right now and join up. And that starts in about 5 minutes.